Welcome to the ocean session of the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. Hello and welcome. I'm the MC of this session, Kim Hae-yoon. As we're going through the COVID-19 situation, the humanities, no matter where you live, have faced similar pains and threats caused by pandemic crisis as a community. The same goes true with the crisis caused by climate change, posing as a threat to our daily lives and hinder our prosperity. It is a must that we, as a community, should join our hands together to promote actions to respond and overcome this crisis. 2021 P4G Seoul Summit aims to realize carbon neutral vision through inclusive green recovery. This session, with the theme of Building Back Bluer Through Oceans, we're going to share thoughts and in-depth discussions on eco-friendly vessels and marine plastic litter. Now it is indeed my great honor and pleasure to invite Minister Moon Sung-hyuk of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea, the hosting country of 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. He is going to give us a keynote speech. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Mr. Ki-taek Lim, the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization. Mr. Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, the Coordinating Minister of Maritime and Investment Affairs of Indonesia. Mr. Allard Castellane, the CEO of Port of Rotterdam. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening from the Republic of Korea. It is my great pleasure and honor to deliver this keynote speech to the ocean session. I would first like to start by extending my sincere appreciation to all participants to this special session. The impressive turnout at today's session, both on and offline, amid the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, goes to show how much our theme, which is building back bluer through oceans, resonates with all of us. I believe it goes without saying how crucial role sea routes play, carrying around 90% of all global trade and 99.7% of Korea's import and export cargoes by volume. The Suez Canal blockage in March this year caused a great disruption in the global supply chain, and it serves as a harsh reminder of the importance of the sea to international trade. We also rely so heavily on the sea routes to carry food, fuel, and medical supplies around different corners of the globe as we continue working to win the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. As the world ushers in the post-COVID era, we've been given yet another task. The economic recovery after COVID-19 should go above and beyond the return to the business as usual and aimed at building back better. The same goes for maritime transport. Making sure that goods are delivered without disruption is just not enough. And we need to work towards greener shipping based on clean energy. Distinguished participants, in 2019 alone, global greenhouse gas emissions reached a new record of 59 gigatons. Out of the 59 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions, around 1 gigaton comes from the maritime transport sector. This enormous figure outnumbers Korea's total annual greenhouse gas emissions. If we hesitate to act now, greenhouse gas emissions from ships will make a quantum leap to reach the extent of 10% of global emissions by 2050. It is time for us to take action and move toward a shared vision of healthy oceans and the people for prosperity. The world has already heard a voice echoing around. At the 2018 International Maritime Organization plenary session, 172 member states agreed to reduce the total annual greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping by at least 50% compared to 2008 by 2050. The global maritime transport industry is also changing fast. Leading maritime transport, shipping, and oil companies and ports around the world launched the Getting to Zero Coalition 2030 at the UN Climate Action Summit in September 2019 to witness the advent of commercially viable zero-emission vessels by 2030. More than 140 companies and research institutes across the maritime, energy, infrastructure, and finance sectors have come together to develop and operate zero-emission vessels and fuels. Korea's premier shipping company, HMM, leading shipbuilder, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Maritime Engineering, government-funded Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering, Korean Register of Shipping, and the Korean Maritime Transportation Safety Authority, which is in brief, KOMSA, are making various contributions as members of the coalition. Distinguished participants, last year, the Republic of Korea declared its commitment to the achievement of carbon neutrality by 2050. Under this vision, the Korean government actively supports the activities of the Getting to Zero Coalition. Going forward, we will fulfill the responsibilities bestowed upon us to achieve decarbonization in maritime transport and establish a green maritime supply chain. First, as a short-term plan, Korea will expand the share of vessels fueled by low-carbon energy, such as LNG, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from ships. The mid to long-term plans include research and development of zero-carbon technologies aimed at the full commercialization of ships running on hydrogen or ammonia. To this end, the Korean government established a clear legal framework in January 2020, making it mandatory for the central and the local governments, as well as public agencies, to build all government-owned ships to be eco-friendly. And in December 2020, the government established the first phase national plan to present a detailed roadmap for the development and the promotion of a wider use of green ships. In line with the plan, HMM will declare its own 2050 HMM carbon neutral strategies at today's session. My appreciation to HMM's efforts. With these ambitious efforts, I strongly hope that Korea's shipping industry will set best practice standards for decarbonization of international shipping. The Korean government will spare no support, including R&D investment in the development of green shipbuilding technologies. Second, Korea will build a port infrastructure to promote and sustain hydrogen-based economy. Ports are the optimal site for generating hydrogen fuel from renewable maritime energy and enable to provide best access and storage of hydrogen as a hub for trade and distribution. Before the end of this year, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries will establish plans to foster Korean ports to be the hub of global hydrogen energy transport network. The Korean government will work to renovate port facilities with the aim of annual supply of more than 3 megatons of hydrogen by 2040, which is tantamount to 60% of Korea's total annual hydrogen consumption. On the last front, Korea will work in earnest to enhance coastal and ocean carbon sinks. Coastal wetlands and halophyte plant communities are globally recognized nature-based carbon sinks, along with forests and grasslands. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries will continue to expand the scope of coastal wetlands restoration and create marine forests of over 54,000 hectares. Korea will enhance blue carbon sequestration to absorb more than 1 megaton of greenhouse gases by 2050 and work even more closely with the international community to expand the coverage of blue carbon. The roadmap for carbon neutrality by 2050 in the oceans and fisheries sector, scheduled to be announced in the second half of this year, will lay out our vision and concrete strategies. Distinguished participants, the world has started painting a post-fossil fuel picture for our future. To keep our oceans ever more resilient to climate change, those of us in the maritime sector must take the lead in bringing about changes. These changes will be drastic and revolutionary. But I believe in the power of optimism. We are ready to transform the world once again through technology and innovation. The only thing we are in need of is an opportunity for all of us to come together for joint action. Our goal of zero emissions cannot be achieved through the efforts of any individual group alone. It is my greatest hope that today's gathering will provide a catalyst for governments, business, and civil societies to join in efforts to ensure a blue recovery through oceans. Thank you very much indeed for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you for the insightful and thought-provoking keynote speech. Minister shares his vision to achieve the goal of zero emissions on oceans. And in that endeavor, I hope the Korean shipping industry, led by Korean premier shipping company HMM, take the lead to achieve the green recovery and serves as an example. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us meet our second keynote speaker, Mr. Im Gi-taek, Secretary General of International Maritime Organization. IMO is dealing with various maritime issues, such as international shipping and shipbuilding. These days, discussion on marine environment is drawing more attention. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Secretary General Im Gi-taek. His keynote speech is about IMO collaborating toward a greener future. Please welcome.
Thank you, moderator. Minister Sung-hyuk, Coordinating Minister Luhut Insa Panjaitan, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to address this important session, which recognizes the vital role of the oceans. Oceans are a valuable resource that, among others, absorb carbon dioxide and buffer the impact of climate change. However, oceans are severely impacted by the carbon emission from human activity. Yet, oceans are home to hundreds of thousands of species and essential for lives and livelihoods, including seafarers and fishers who work on and depend on the oceans. That is why we, at International Maritime Organization, IMO, have been working with the governments and the maritime industry to ensure a sustainable blue economy by promoting ocean governance and enhancing the cooperation and collaboration of all maritime stakeholders. Throughout the pandemic, the world has been made aware of our dependence on shipping, seafarers, and marine personnel. Shipping has continued to deliver goods in keeping the world trade going, while many thousands of seafarers have become stranded at the sea, working long beyond their contracted time. I thank the governments who have designated the seafarers as key workers with an aim to help facilitate seafarers' safe movement across the borders and ensure they can continue to work safely, and welcome the efforts of all, including shipping industry partners who have been working tirelessly to advocate for seafarers. Following the immense socio-economic impact of the pandemic on the shipping industry, it is time to pave the way for a reimagined future of the industry. We have an opportunity to drive a green recovery and ensure a sustainable maritime future. Our major contribution to this green and sustainable maritime future will be the digitalization of shipping, which is progressing rapidly. Exchange of information between ships and ports over digital platforms is mandatory under IMO's Facilitation Convention. This efficient arrangement already ensured that shipping was able to continue to deliver world trade even in the midst of the pandemic. Digitalization is a solution, but the challenge is to ensure it is fully implemented across all nations and all ports. The wider endorsement of the maritime single window concept, for example, is needed to strengthen efficiencies by allowing submission of all information required by various government agencies through one single portal, streamlining port activities to benefit the supply chain. Another example is the IMO strategy for implementation of e-navigation, the harmonization and the standardization of digital technologies and the user interfaces will support safer and more environment-friendly shipping. The benefits of digitalization and automation need to be harnessed to full advantage while ensuring user needs are taken into account. When it comes to tackling climate change, shipping is on a course to decarbonize. IMO member state in 2018 adopted the initial GHG strategy with a clear goal to phase out GHG emission from shipping. This June, next month, IMO is expected to adopt important short-term measures to cut carbon intensity of all ships. The adoption of mandatory measures is supported by the comprehensive impact assessment of the measures on states, paying particular attention to the needs of developing countries. IMO has produced and will continue to adopt concrete measures to move shipping on the path to decarbonization. These measures are based on the in-depth technical discussions. We will revise IMO's initial THE strategy in 2023 in the light of experience gained. The need to decarbonize will impact on ship design, ship operation, and the future fuels. There needs to be investment in R&D, infrastructure. IMO is collaborating with a range of partners to further promote and accelerate research and development into low and zero carbon marine fuels. This includes many stakeholders from public and private sectors, not only in shipping and the port industry, but also private and developmental banks and academia. The way forward is complex, but by working together with a determination, we will ensure that shipping will make a key contribution in the fight against climate change. Collaborative actions are key to making sure no country is left behind when it comes to shipping's decarbonized future. The support of our donors is critical. We have several ongoing partnership initiatives with the key stakeholders, including, among others, UN partner agencies, the World Bank, European Union, Norway, Germany, Singapore, and the Republic of Korea. All our initiatives have one common goal: to strengthen partnership, build capacity, and accelerate innovation and technology uptake, and to address the challenges faced by developing countries, in particular, small island developing states and the least developed countries. We all have a part to play to push innovative thinking to develop and implement solutions for climate change and for the health of our oceans. To keep pace with the demands of the global economy and expectations for sustainable growth, the maritime world needs to be in the forefront of the transformational change. Meeting our goals requires cooperation and collaboration of all maritime stakeholders to develop innovative solutions for the green and sustainable maritime sector of the future. I look forward to fruitful discussion in this session. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the keynote speech. Your Excellency has given us something really to think about for further discussion. Now it is time for the third keynote speech. Please welcome Mr. Luhut Banzara Panjaitan, the Coordinating Minister of Maritime and Investment Affairs of Indonesia. He is actually visiting Korea to attend this P4G Seoul Summit and other important partnership engagement in areas of future industries and smart and green energy. Minister, thank you for your presence out of your busy schedule. The floor is yours.
His Excellency Mr. Moon Seong-hyuk, Minister of Ocean and Fisheries, Republic of Korea. His Excellency Mr. Bai Jong-chon, CEO of HMM. His Excellency Lee Sung-sin, CEO of DSME. Mr. Kim Bon-ki, President of CRISO. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to Mr. Moon Seong-hyuk, Minister of Ocean and Fisheries, Republic of Korea, for hosting this event and for giving me the privilege to patron this important event, Ocean Special Season 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. I am very interested with the theme of this meeting, building back blue through oceans. It sounds challenging and inspiring for the world, which consists 70% of water. Indonesia has 17,504 islands with 108,000 kilometers of coastlines. More than 272 million people spread out of those islands. Therefore, the marine transportation becomes paramount. Marine transportation is one of the important tools for our connectivity. We use marine transportation to deliver staple food, groceries, commodities, and people. In some areas of Indonesia, people count only on marine transportation for their living. Climate change is a challenge for all of us, either government, businesses, as citizens for decades, and in this moment, coupled by pandemic COVID-19. Indonesia has a strong interest in controlling the impacts of climate change, considering the geographic, climatological, demographic, and socio-economic conditions that are very vulnerable. In this vulnerable time, Indonesia keeps the commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 29% through its own resources and up to 41% conditionally with international support, including finance, technology transfer, and capacity building compared to businesses as usual scenario in 2030. Indonesia also strives to contribute maintaining the increase of global temperatures less than 2%, than 2 Celsius, even trying to achieve 1.5 Celsius. Indonesia has ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emission by achieving the peaking of all mitigation sectors in 2030 and explore opportunities from international support, especially in finance and technology transfer, to rapidly progress toward net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the energy sector is one of the main sectors in our net zero emission plans. Energy sectors contribute 11% out of the 29% in our NDC. The primary greenhouse gas emission reduction come from renewable energy. We want to reiterate our commitment to expand renewable energy utilization, such as biofuel, geothermal, and microhydro. We commit to accelerate renewable energy project development in Indonesia and an opportunity for potential investors to participate in future renewable energy projects. Furthermore, renewable energy use in shipping and refuels concept of future vessels. We know for international shipping case, I cannot be separated from the increasing amount of exhaust gas emission produced by vessel engines. Exhaust gases have been known to cause health and environmental problems. In terms of reducing greenhouse gas emission from shipping, we have made some strategy to reduce carbon intensity of the fleet of the at least 40% by doing midterm measures in 2023 to 2030 and reach target 50% reduction of total greenhouse gas emission in 2050. The Ministry of Transportation has made some energy efficiencies, including modification of vessel engine for international sailing vessel and new vessels since 2013, and utilization of solar cells and energy for navigation of our vessels. LNG boat is 60 to 65% more efficient than ordinary fishing boat. Up to now, over 85,000 fishing boats are using LNG system. Next milestone is to develop zero-emission boats for bigger size boats, 100 GT, which usually go to sea for weeks or months. Indonesia has implemented low sulfur vessel fuel in some ports, like Batam, Dumai, Balikpapan, Tanjung Perak, and Tanjung Priok, which is required by IMO since January 2020. The government of Indonesia will do a large-scale mangrove replanting, rehabilitation, and restoration for the size of 620,000 hectares over 4 years until 2024. This year, we will restore 150,000 hectares, and we have more than 2004 types of mangrove species. I would like to invite Republic of Korea to collaborate in establish of mangrove center of excellence that will be one-stop botanical garden for mangrove species in Indonesia. Considering the importance of synergizing policy to support one another, Indonesia also its serious concerns on marine debris issues with a view to reduce the potential waste leakage from anthropocentric activities into the sea. In 2018, Indonesia set 70% of marine debris reduction target by 2025. From 2 years of implementation, it's recorded that Indonesia has achieved 15.3% of marine debris reduction through implementing 5 strategies, namely national movement includes to increase the awareness of stakeholders, land-based and sea-based waste management, financial mechanism, and research and development. Even though it has shown a reduction in these 2 years, there is still greater challenges remain ahead. We need to come up with the concrete action for the next 4 years to mitigate plastic waste into the sea. Therefore, we are open to have collaborate action with countries in region to combat marine plastic waste pollution. We are fully aware that marine debris issue is not only one country problem, but it's a regional and global issue that needs to be tackled together through collaborative action among global society. According to the Indonesia and the government of Korea has a bilateral cooperation concerning strengthening and improvement for marine litter response. We can elaborate further this cooperation in technology intervention with a view to accelerate the achievement of marine litter reduction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now allow me to touch upon the sustainable ocean blue economy. The government of Indonesia is committed to sustainable ocean management with balances food security, business objectives against sustainability, and the long-term impact on the ocean ecology. Meanwhile, the Indonesian government is currently developing a sustainable blue economy model where environmental risk is handled, ecological damage is minimized, and where economic activity is managed in a way to restore ocean health. I hope Indonesia can work together with the Republic of Korea to reach zero-emission vessel by supporting to use B30 and ships, and IMO can recognize is an alternative to low sulfur vessel biofuel and available for all ports. We are also looking forward for further cooperating in research and capacity building for zero-emission vessel. In my closing, on behalf of the government of Indonesia, we will have a stronger collaboration in reducing greenhouse gas emission toward carbon neutral and implementing energy transition. Hopefully, this dialogue will give enlightenment for all multi-stakeholders to act together to achieve the target for all mankind well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your invaluable contribution as a keynote speaker to this session. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ocean session of 2021 P4G Seoul Summit involves two parts. First, zero-emission vessels, one of the main challenges to achieve the carbon neutrality. In order to bring an end to the era of fossil fuels, which causes serious climate change, energy innovation will be inevitable. Considering the enormous scale of international maritime transport, it is urgent to find an alternative fuel for vessels. As we start, let us take a look at a short video related to our topic, zero-emission vessels. We are very much looking forward to the era of zero-emission vessels that will serve as a significant countermeasure to ocean climate change. As we've seen from the video, IMO agreed to reduce the total annual greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping by at least 50% compared to 2008 by 2050. It will never be easy to achieve, but it is our common goal that requires a collective action to bring the goal into reality. In that sense, please meet P4G Excellent Partnership Getting to Zero Collision, the global collision that achieves a meaningful outcome. We are joined by Ms. Johanna Christensen, the Managing Director of the Global Maritime Forum, a member of the Getting to Zero Collision. Please welcome our presenter, Managing Director Johanna Christensen.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about shipping's decarbonization as a win-win opportunity that combines climate action with considerable prospects for green growth, job creation, and many other benefits for P4G countries. International maritime transport is on the verge of its fifth energy revolution, from rowing boats to sails to steam to diesel. And within this decade, we will start seeing ships sailing along deep sea trade routes on new zero-emission fuels. Next slide, please. Shipping transports around 80% of global trade by volume. It connects the world by supplying essential goods that society needs to thrive and underpins many countries' economic growth and prosperity. This is, however, not done without some adverse consequences. Maritime shipping represents about 2 to 3% of the world's total annual greenhouse gas emissions. Such a sizable carbon footprint that only shows signs of growing and a decades-long investment horizon, with that, shipping needs to chart a green course now. As mentioned by our host today, in 2018, the UN's International Maritime Organization adopted an initial greenhouse gas strategy. This prescribes that international shipping must reduce its total greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% by 2050, whilst pursuing efforts towards phasing them out as soon as possible in this century. Merchant ships have an average lifespan of 25 to 30 years. Consequently, to meet this decarbonization target, zero-emission vessels must start entering the global fleet by 2030 at the latest, with their numbers to be rapidly scaled up through the 2030s and 40s. It's on this basis that the Getting to Zero Coalition has united more than 160 companies, NGOs, IGOs, knowledge institutions, and governments around a common objective: to have commercially viable zero-emission vessels operating along deep-sea trade routes by 2030, supported by the necessary infrastructure for scalable zero-carbon energy sources, including production, distribution, storage, and bunkering. As this objective makes clear, shipping's decarbonization is not done with ships alone. An S-curve-based analysis for the Getting to Zero Coalition suggests that zero-emission fuels derived from green hydrogen need to make up approximately 5% of international shipping's fuel mix by 2030 to meet decarbonization targets. Encouraging the uptake of zero-carbon fuels on this trajectory means that shipping's decarbonization will require significant investment on land as well as at sea. In fact, our research shows that around 90% of the investment needed to decarbonize shipping will be in land-based energy infrastructure. This includes investment in renewable energy production, in production facilities for zero-carbon fuels, and in land-based storage and bunkering infrastructure needed for their supply. The cumulative investment over this time horizon, so between 2030 and 2050, to meet the target set by the IMO, amounts approximately to $1 to $1.4 trillion. So this represents actually $1 trillion market opportunity for countries that choose to become suppliers of new zero-emission marine fuels. Many countries, next slide please. Many countries that are not traditional exporters of energy stand to gain from this transition. In fact, many developing and emerging economies have abundant renewable energy potential, which can be used to produce zero-emission marine fuels, such as green hydrogen and green ammonia. Those that are placed close to key shipping lanes could also offer bunkering to supply international as well as domestic shipping. While the decarbonization of shipping isn't necessarily a key priority for all countries, or the primary driver to taking advantage of this opportunity, it comes with a range of co-benefits. For example, there's enormous demand for energy from countries that aren't equally well endowed with renewable energy potential. Therefore, production of zero-emission marine fuels can constitute a new source of export earnings. Building up a domestic supply of green energy is also a way of enhancing energy security, a key concern for many countries. The production of green energy, including to fuel the shipping sector, can create jobs that are sustainable and long-term. This provides opportunities for reskilling workforces connected to traditional fossil fuel industries, in addition to creating new jobs beyond these industries. Importantly, shipping's energy transition can benefit other sectors of the economy. One interesting example is industrial port areas, where fuels based on renewable energy could supply both the shipping sector as well as other industries sharing the same location. For example, other forms of transportations, such as heavy-duty trucking or the like, steel, mining, agriculture, to name a few. A major concern in many port cities is air pollution, which can have a hugely negative consequences for the local population. Shifting to clean fuels could go a long way towards addressing this issue, and therefore make a significant contribution towards improving public health and well-being in these areas. The Getting to Zero Coalition has partnered with P4G to explore business and growth opportunities related to shipping decarbonization in 3 partner countries: Indonesia, South Africa, and Mexico. There are clearly business opportunities related to the production of zero-emission fuels. In addition to this, we have seen that there can also be significant opportunities related to ports, as well as to the development of zero-emission vessels. When it comes to ports, not only do they provide bunkering and storage, they are also hubs for exports and imports. Some might produce fuels that can supply their own vessels, such as tugs operating in the port. These can be important first steps for ports to decarbonize their operations. Many industrial ports also have multiple potential off-takers for zero-emission fuels in one location and could pursue synergies in the wider energy transition. Moreover, they function as regulators and play an important role as a community builder, bringing further stakeholders on board in the transition. Vessels are another key business opportunity related to shipping decarbonization. Much progress is being made in developing zero-emission fuels of the future. In developing zero-emission vessels of the future. And from our mapping study, we are now seeing many of the necessary technologies being tested and deployed. We'll be hearing much more about this from my fellow speaker and coalition partner at DSME, and some really interesting developments around vessels in a little while. I'd now like to briefly turn our attention to some of the work done in our 3 partner countries. In the first phase of the project, we have been focusing on energy opportunities based on renewable potential in the 3 partner countries. So first, we looked at South Africa. South Africa is situated on one of the busiest international sea routes, a passing point between Asia, South America, and Europe, with strong trade links with China, Germany, the US, the UK, and India. It has already committed to reaching net zero by 2050. It is also a country with an abundance of renewable energy potential. The South African government is taking an interest in hydrogen and is in the process of developing a hydrogen society roadmap. With enabling policy frameworks and investment, South Africa has enough renewable energy potential to cover its domestic electricity demand, as well as the production of zero carbon fuels to supply commercial vessels bunkering in its ports. Ports with status as special economic zones have advantages that could be explored. In South Africa, we see potential synergies with the mining sector, which is both an enormously important sector in the country and looking to decarbonize its operations. Mexico also has solar and wind potential that far exceeds forecast demand by 2030, and a strategic geographic location on key shipping routes, both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Developing renewables for the shipping sector could therefore service several ports and export markets, including through existing supply chains. Moreover, it could enhance energy security, which is a priority in Mexico. Through our project, we've been able to engage with several local government stakeholders who are interested in pursuing this opportunity and are looking at different incentives that could position them as frontrunners. We also see an interesting synergy with the auto industry, which is big in Mexico and which is facing customer demands to reduce emissions from across its value chain, including its Scope 3 emissions. I was pleased to hear about the ambitions from the minister from Indonesia in his speech just now. Indonesia is strategically located close to key shipping lanes, for example, the Strait of Malacca, which is one of the world's busiest and most important shipping lanes. Indonesia is also home to a large number of small and medium-sized ports where smaller vessels could be electrified directly. It also has an abundance of waste-derived biofuels that could be used to decarbonize the domestic shipping fleet, which is mostly made up of smaller vessels. In terms of the next steps for the project, we will build upon our initial work of identifying energy opportunities in Mexico, South Africa, and Indonesia by exploring the potential to develop more concrete actions and projects in these geographies, together with members of the Getting to Zero Coalition and stakeholders from the 3 partner countries, including government. Realizing the opportunities that we see in all 3 countries will require real ambition, both from the public and private sector, in identifying areas for collaboration and creating meaningful partnerships and actions together. One key action area, which we hope to develop further, is to explore the potential for green corridors between P4G countries and other relevant geographies. This will require locating centers of demand for exports from these countries and looking at the potential for specific trade routes to be greened through identifying synergies in trade, regulation, and infrastructure between these geographies. Green corridors can serve as a testbed for the new business models and regulatory approaches that will be necessary to unlock the wider opportunities connected to maritime decarbonization. Another key component needed to get such initiatives off the ground are pilot projects. Consortia of first movers from across the value chain working together to establish ways of de-risking investments, building confidence in new technologies, and other aspects necessary in the transition. This will require cooperation and engagement between a number of different stakeholders so as to make a business case for zero-emission pilot projects in more nascent geographies with regards to maritime decarbonization. It is our hope that through identifying such actions, both the public and private sector can help unlock the opportunities for these countries through identifying concrete ways to convert this potential into action. To meet shipping's decarbonization target, it is crucial that zero-emission ships become the dominant and competitive choice by 2030. A zero-emission fleet is only commercially viable if zero-emission energy sources are competitive with traditional fuels. Today, however, fossil fuels remain readily available, reliable, and cheap, as well as being compatible with existing ships, engines, and bunkering infrastructure, creating a competitiveness gap the market cannot solve on its own. New policies are thus urgently needed, regulating and incentivizing ship owners, operators, and fuel providers in a direction that drives investments in new fuels and technology to enable a zero-emission fleet. Shipping is so fortunate to have the International Maritime Organization as the international body regulating its activities, ensuring a level playing field and an efficient global maritime transport system. Many stakeholders across the whole maritime ecosystem and outside are closely watching the International Maritime Organization and its member states over the coming weeks and months. They are particularly keen on seeing progress on 3 issues contributing to shipping's decarbonization in line with public expectations. First, the International Maritime Organization must align international shipping with the Paris Agreement temperature goal by adopting a target of full decarbonization of international shipping by 2050, when its greenhouse gas strategy is revised this year and next. This would set a clear direction of travel for the industry to achieve carbon neutrality by mid-century, a direction which has already been set for domestic emissions by many of the world's nations, including China, the EU, Japan, South Korea, and the US. Second, the International Maritime Organization must make progress this year on meaningful measures to bridge the competitiveness gap between carbon-based fuels and zero-carbon energy sources. This includes market-based measures, effectively setting a price on greenhouse gas emissions based on a full life cycle analysis of energy sources. Progress this year is needed to instill confidence across the maritime value chain that such measures will enter into force in 2025 and make the transition to zero-emission shipping investable at scale. The required price on greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping needed to reach that 5% zero-emission fuels by 2030 target that I mentioned earlier in the presentation can be significantly reduced if the generated revenue from a market-based measure is used to support the deployment at scale of zero-emission fuels and vessels. This would also help de-risk first movers and make investment in zero-emission vessels and fuel production possible. Third, the International Maritime Organization must ensure a globally effective and equitable transition to zero-emission shipping. This could be achieved if part of the funds raised through a market-based measure was used to support climate-vulnerable countries, as well as to support the development and deployment of zero-emission fuels and technologies in developing countries, particularly in small island developing states and the least developed countries. By supporting the introduction of meaningful policy measures at the International Maritime Organization, policymakers can incentivize climate action and unlock green growth opportunities for countries like South Africa, Mexico, and Indonesia. Shipping's decarbonization is possible, but it will require urgent and sustained action, as well as public-private collaboration. Let us seize the opportunities of shipping's 5th energy revolution together to encourage the transition to a zero-emission industry, while at the same time creating new green growth opportunities and improving livelihoods and human well-being around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your informative and inspiring presentation. It was Ms. Johanna Christensen, a member of Getting to Zero Coalition. We'll all look forward to more of your activities from the Getting to Zero Coalition and further concrete progress. Currently, there are more than 12,400 cars powered by hydrogen in Korean roads. The country is providing about 33% of supply of hydrogen vehicles in the world. It demonstrates how much the Korean people are interested in eco-friendly automobiles. If that's the case, what about eco-friendly fuels in oceans? Where do we stand in terms of technology innovation of eco-friendly shipbuilding? We're going to invite the speaker, Dr. Han Na-rae, Principal Engineer of Daewoo Shipbuilding Maritime Engineering, a leading company in the field of eco-friendly shipbuilding. Please welcome her with a round of applause.
Hello, online and on-site attendees. I'm Nara Rebecca Han. I've been working as a naval architect at Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. I'm honored to be able to present our collaboration works at this P4G conference. I'll introduce you to our two projects in particular. One is the integration of smart ships and smart port facilities with the Port of Rotterdam. And the other is the development of ammonia-fueled ships in collaboration with Lloyd Register and Man Energy Solutions. To begin, I'll give an overview of the IMO greenhouse gas emissions strategy. Decarbonization in shipping is an essential part of reducing global greenhouse gas emissions. Almost 70 grams of CO2 are generated by shipping 1 ton of goods for 1 kilometer. The primary goal of the IMO greenhouse gas strategy is to reduce total annual greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping by 50% and carbon intensity by 70% by the year 2050 compared to 2008 levels. In order to achieve carbon neutrality in shipping, our company's efforts in various fields are on progress. We have focused on energy efficiency improvement. In addition, voyage optimization can be achieved with smart ship technology. As an effective midterm measure, LNG fuel systems are applied to tankers and container ships in our shipyard. Now, to create groundbreaking carbon neutral solutions, we are developing alternative fuel technologies, especially ammonia-fueled ships. Now, I'll introduce our joint research project with the Port of Rotterdam. This collaboration began in June 2020. In shipping systems, digitalization has become a remarkable trend. Utilizing IT technology allows the shipping industry to maximize its operational efficiency. Daewoo Shipbuilding Smart Ship System and Rotterdam Port Smart Port System will realize this by implementing a digital interaction. Real-time information transfer between the ship and the port creates more seamless communication. This leads to better voyage optimization, which reduces carbon emissions. It also increases the efficiency of port resource planning, including cargo operation and harbor safety maneuvering measures. This process diagram shows how a ship enters a port in the current port system. Information is exchanged through the satellite communication system. However, the communication cycle can be difficult and cause delays in sharing information. The key elements of our collaboration are energy efficiency and operation safety. For the past year of this collaboration, we have coordinated our data formatting for information exchange. Currently, we are engineering a module to communicate information between the ship and the port in real time. In this design process, we also plan to perform pilot tests on ships equipped with DS4 technology. Through this project, we will achieve the just-in-time arrival by voyage optimization and maximize the efficiency of the shipping logistics system. These are goals for emission reduction. We work together to reduce more than 0.1 billion tons CO2 per year, reduce greenhouse gas near port area, reduce fuel and time waste, reduce ship fouling, the most significant contributor for CO2 emission. In the future, if all port systems are digitalized and real-time communication between all ships and ports becomes possible, a remarkable improvement in operational efficiency can be expected. Our second collaboration involves developing ammonia-fueled container ships with Lloyd Register and Man Energy solutions. New technologies always present uncertainties and challenges. In order to apply new fuel system to ships and their engines, we must consider many technical elements of the fuel system. From June 2020, we carried out the joint development project with El Al and MAN-ES to address these key technical elements. Finally, we received the approval in principle from El Al in December 2020. Now, I'll share some of the details of the collaboration. The project began with the container ship, which is a vessel that is 400 meters long, capable of loading 23,000 TEU containers. There are some distinct features of the ammonia system, such as ammonia fuel tanks, fuel supply system, bunkering station, and ammonia burning engine. The volume of an ammonia fuel tank is about 3 times as large as an oil tank required to travel the same distance. For a large 20,000 cubic meter ammonia fuel tank, the ship's container capacity is reduced by 400 TEU. The greatest challenge of applying an ammonia fuel system is its deadly toxicity to humans. Depending on the concentration and time of ammonia exposure, it can be fatal. Moreover, ammonia can cause erosion to specific materials. Additionally, international regulations for ammonia fuel systems have not yet been established. Given the aforementioned challenges, risk analysis is one of our primary undertakings. Specifically, we have conducted hazard and hazard risk analysis. In the hazard analysis, we identified risk factors, and through the hazard analysis, we established operational procedures for bunkering and navigation. Through these processes, we identified strategies to address toxicity and corrosion. These include double wall piping, selection of materials, enhanced ventilation systems, completely new safety equipment not used on existing ships, increased control measures as gas detection systems, emergency shutdown systems, and personal protective equipment. Using ammonia as marine fuel significantly reduces carbon emissions compared to traditional heavy fuel oil. This chart shows the carbon savings rate depending on how much fuel is mixed. On this chart, Each line going up represents a different ratio of fuel oil combination. Exploring this fuel ratio is part of our transition to greener marine fuel systems. Dual fuel engines can utilize existing two-stroke diesel engines, making them highly feasible and cost-effective option. Moreover, the composition of the fuel can be adjusted according to the supply status of ammonia fuel. By increasing the percentage of ammonia, carbon emissions can be reduced. Adjusting this mixing ratio must be done gradually over time. Nitrogen oxide emissions may occur, so we must also enhance existing NOx treatment technologies to prevent environmental pollution. In conclusion, I want to share what we need to do to contribute to carbon neutrality. In particular, policy support from the government must be sustained, and investment in green fuels is essential. International organizations must continue to develop directions for decarbonization pathways, including regulations and standards for new marine fuels. The shipping industry should invest in building infrastructures to supply zero-emission fuels. Moreover, the shipbuilding industry should continue to develop technologies such as digitalization and eco-friendly fuel systems for ships. Together, each sector can contribute to the collective goal of carbon neutrality. Korean shipyards, including Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, possesses incredible ship design technology and expertise. Therefore, our company will continue to work on these projects in order to pioneer such carbon-neutral technologies. Green we go, change we make. Thank you for your time and attention during this presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your informative presentation, Dr. Han-na. It's always inspiring to good to know that so much progress is being made in various fields. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's about time to explore to the south. Our southernmost continent, it is about 17,240 kilometers away from here, Seoul. It is the King Sejong Station, the Korean Antarctic Research Program. The research station is carrying out various activities and researches, collecting data and promoting activities to preserve the precious Antarctic environment. It is time for a video screening titled Introduction to Climate Change in Antarctica. Let us take a look.
저희 월동연구대는 남극 환경 변화에 대한 연구를 주로 하고 있으며 인근 타 기지들과 긴밀한 협력을 통하여 남극 환경 보호 업무를 수행하고 있습니다. 보통 11월에서 3월은 남극에서 여름에 해당하는데 아무리 더워도 영상 15도를 넘기진 않습니다. 작년과 올해 들어 기온이 영상 15도까지 올라간 적이 있고 대부분 영상권인 날씨를 보였습니다. 믿기지 않으시겠지만 대원들이 반팔 반바지로 실외 이동을 할 수 있을 정도로 따뜻하였습니다. 물론 겨울에 눈이 많이 올 때면 온통 눈으로 뒤덮이지만 며칠 날이 좋아지면 햇빛이 잘 드는 지역을 중심으로 푸르른 이끼들과 지우리들이 마치 풀밭처럼 드러납니다. 전에 일부 지역에서만 자라던 남극 좀새풀이란 식물은 해안가를 중심으로 넓게 퍼져 있습니다. 특히 이들은 겨울에도 얼어 죽지 않고 번식을 합니다. 그만큼 남극의 겨울이 전보다 따뜻해졌다고 할 수 있겠습니다. 남극은 특히 여름에 빙벽이 집중적으로 무너지는 것을 관측할 수 있습니다. 기지 근처 마리안소만 지역에 빙벽이 있는데 빙벽이 무너질 때 큰 천둥 소리가 납니다. 빙벽이 무너지는 소리가 하루에도 수십 번은 들리는 것 같습니다. 최근 기온 상승으로 남극 전체 빙벽이 이전보다 더 상상할 수 없을 정도로 많이 무너져 내리는데 지구 온난화의 영향으로 더 가속화되고 있는 실정입니다. 작년에 이어 올해 들어서도 4.0 이상의 지진이 자주 발생하고 있습니다. 과거 미국의 지하수 주입 실험을 통한 지진과의 상관관계 연구 시 주입량에 비례하여 지진이 증가하였다고 보고된 바 있습니다. 미 항공우주국 나사에서도 빙하가 녹으면 지진과 쓰나미가 확대할 수 있다는 경고를 하였습니다. 기지 자체 통계에 따르면 하계 기간에 지진 횟수와 규모가 증가하고 반대로 동계에는 지진이 현저히 감소한 것으로 보여집니다만 정확한 인과관계는 더 조사, 연구할 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 남극의 기후변화를 포함하여 지구의 자연재해나 생태계의 변화는 모두 지구의 온난화에 의한 영향이 가장 크다고 생각합니다. 이는 화석연료의 사용과 무분별한 자연 파괴, 자원 낭비가 가져온 재앙입니다. 따라서 자원을 아껴 써야 함은 물론이고 에너지 체계는 조속히 태양광, 풍력, 조력 등 지속 가능한 친환경 에너지로 전환하는 것이 무엇보다 중요하다고 생각합니다.
Thank you. It is so disturbing to know the ice cliff is collapsing on Marian Cove. This tells us how serious the impact caused by climate change is in the region. It seems that Antarctica is the farthest away from the impact of the global warming. But ironically, it has the most severe impact. The fact demands us urgent action. In this regard, the panel discussion holds all the more significance. The topic is truly related to our current situation, which is harsh reality. The topic of this session is the Building Back Bluer Through Oceans. It is an opportunity to carry out practical and in-depth discussion on carbon zero shipping industry. And it is an opportunity to have an in-depth discussion for the fruitful result and productive discussions. The 5 panelists will participate via online and offline. And please welcome Mr. Alit Keesterlein, the CEO of Port of Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Okay, and Mr. Mark Daly, President of Marine and Offshore Lloyd's Register. He has joined us by online. And Mr. Lee Sung-geun, CEO of Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. He is here with us. And welcome. And Mr. Bae Jae-hoon, CEO of Hyundai Merchant Marine. Please welcome. Ms. Anne Stephenson, CEO of Danish Shipping. She's here with us through online. And the moderator will be served by Dr. Kim Bo-gi, President of Korea Research Institute of Ships and Oceans Engineering. Dr. Kim Bo-gi, the floor is yours.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Boo-ki Kim. I am responsible for Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering, KRISO, as a president. I feel very honored to have an opportunity of chairing this panel discussion with experts like you from various fields. Today, we are going to discuss zero carbon for the shipping industry and its development for the way moving forward. The international society has been putting a lot of effort to overcome the problems resulting from climate change and doing research on the sustainable development goals based on the latest assessment. The maritime industry is no exception. IMO set the ambitious targets for 50% reduction of greenhouse gas by 2050 compared to 2008 level. To achieve this goal, they are putting a lot of effort. There are various issues related to the decarbonization in the shipping industry. I don't think we can discuss all the issues today due to the time limit. We need to narrow down all related issues into three categories. First, the public-private cooperation in the shipping industry about zero carbon. Second, the development and the supply of zero carbon fuels and the relevant ships. Lastly, bridging the technology gap between countries. To proceed discussions today, I will address the name of a person first to whom a question is directed. And I will ask a question related to one of the three topics I mentioned just before. After we cover all the three topics, a discussion session with all the panelists will be followed. At this time, you may want to use the questions from the audience through chat box. I will make questions to Korean natives in Korean and others in English. Is it clear enough on the way to proceed the panel discussions today? Then let's begin. Let's start with the first topic, which is about the future of zero carbon shipping and the role of the port authorities. First, I'd like to ask to Ms. Anne Stephenson. She is the CEO of Denmark Shipping Association. Shipping companies have been focusing on the development of green ships and alternative fuels for GHG reduction. They are known to have set more aggressive targets. For example, planning to introduce green ships and operate by biofuels by 2023 without considering new LNG ship orders. Let me ask your opinions on the future prospects of shipping industry and whether such ambitious targets would be achievable.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kim. Thank you for inviting me for this distinguished panel. And you're absolutely right. In Danish shipping, we have a clear climate ambition consisting of 2 targets, which our board adopted back in 2019. Firstly, we aim to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 without the use of climate compensation. And secondly, we want to have the first ocean-going zero-emission vessels to be in commercial operation no later than 2030. We believe this is achievable, and fortunately, we are not alone. As you all know, US Special Climate Envoy John Kerry announced in April that the US will work for the IMO to adopt a goal of reducing global emissions from shipping to zero by 2050. So this is a much more ambitious goal than the one that the IMO has today. This entails a great deal of change in our industry. Not only will we have to change from a readily available fossil fuel to several different renewable and zero carbon fuels, we will also have to learn how to cooperate far more across sectors. Studies indicate that close to 90% of the investments needed to decarbonize shipping will have to be made on land. To me, this is a clear indication that we need to work together on R&D and full-scale projects to succeed in this massive transition towards 2050. The transition to carbon neutrality by 2050 requires more than just technology developments. The requirements from customers is likely to be a strong driver, especially in the segments closest to the end user. As an example, IKEA, the global furniture chain, I think you all know them, just a few weeks ago announced that they do not believe LNG is the right fuel for shipping. And they are one of the world's biggest shippers who can actually set the scene. This level of engagement from customers is new and very welcome. Additionally, we need to have a regulation globally which drives absolute reductions and provides, of course, a global level playing field. This is hugely important for shipping. Furthermore, the IMO has to play an important role also going forward in the practical applications of the new fuel types. Regulation on safety, bunkering, and other relevant technical requirements will have to be fit for purpose. The Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping is one of the examples of platforms for cooperation. It is a not-for-profit, independent research and development center, and it works across the shipping sector with industry, academia, and authorities. Earlier this year, Maersk Line, the liner company, announced it will launch a carbon-neutral container vessel by 2023, 7 years ahead of schedule. The vessel will be powered by either carbon-neutral e-methanol, for example, produced by Power-to-X technology, or sustainable biomethanol from non-food crops, although it will still be able to run on standard very low sulfur fuel oil if required. The big challenge will be to get sufficient supplies of proper carbon-neutral fuels already in 2023. In the Danish national context, we have multiple ferries already running on electricity, and we have a lot of small projects on hydrogen ferries and battery-driven crew boats coming on. We have noted the appetite for ordering LNG-powered vessels has increased over the last year or so, and it is tempting, very tempting, to opt for LNG as a marine fuel, as it is possible to comply with both the EEDI and the carbon intensity indicator requirements. However, LNG is a fossil fuel, and although some LNG ships may be retrofitted to run on alternative fuel types, there is a real risk of logging into the wrong technology in the long term. Further, the issue of methane slip has not been solved yet, which makes the emission reductions from LNG even smaller. We don't know how to regulate on methane yet. We don't know whether it's going to be regulated on new builds through the engine, or it's going to be abatement technology, but we know that there will probably be regulation coming on in the not too distant future. The demand for renewable and low carbon fuels across various sectors will be significant in the years to come. This provides an extensive need for renewable energy production in order to produce the fuel needed for, among other things, maritime utilization. With significant penetration levels of renewable electricity in our energy system, Denmark is not only a great maritime nation, but also a significant player in the installation and production of offshore wind. We are really hoping to see this be emulated on a global scale. We are seeing tendencies for this both in the US, in Asia, and in Korea, and this will surely be needed to reach the path of supply for the demand of renewable and low carbon fuels in the future, not only for shipping, but also for the airliner industry and the wider economy. Thank you very much. That was my starting remarks. Thank you very much for the word, and looking forward for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Ms. Anne Stephenson, thank you so much for your detailed explanations on the future prospects of shipping industry. You have mentioned about the activities of transition to carbon neutrality by 2050 and technology development for zero-emission vessels. During your explanation, I thought you may have a question for the activities from the port side on how to manage the transition to carbon neutrality. If then, could you please ask one of the panelists here for the question?
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kim, and that's right. I'm very happy to see that we have different players from the shipping sector here, and I'm happy to see that the CEO of the Port of Rotterdam, Mr. Kastelein, is here. I would like to ask you a question. You know, from a infrastructure point of view, how will you, as a leading European port, seek to handle the significant transition from the utilization bunkering of conventional fossil fuel types to a greener fuels such as ammonia, methanol, or hydrogen? We don't know what it's going to be yet, but how will you manage to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stephenson. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having me here. It's my pleasure to share my thoughts. Let me start by confirming the remark made by Mrs. Stephenson regarding the ambitious goal setting. The Port of Rotterdam wishes to be a fully carbon neutral port by 2050, and that's not only related to the immediate business activities, but also related to all the industrial activities that take place in the port. Rotterdam, by far the largest port in Europe, an employment reach, if you like, of some 385,000 people and several thousands of companies, large multinationals, Air Products, Air Liquide, BP, Exxon, Shell, and the like. And we've set out on a journey to decarbonize our footprint entirely by 2050. So I would entirely agree with your statement that the IMO's targets are not ambitious enough. There's several industrial areas that are hard to abate, and the maritime sector is one, but should, as far as I'm concerned, be in line with the overall European aspirational goals. From that perspective, I strongly believe that as a port, we should make available the necessary infrastructure for the various partners and parties in the value chain to be able to have access to sufficient supplies. So in other words, like we were front runner on the development of LNG facilities, and I would agree with you that LNG's footprint is not sustainable enough. So it might be something that we welcome today as being one of the best of what's available, but also ultimately LNG should have a zero emission profile by whatever technology means and innovations they may be able or not be able to achieve that. So because I have a strong preference for being outcome-based and focused, and that means that I would not wish to make a choice today, whether it's ammonia, liquid hydrogen, LOHCs, e-fuels. I do not know the answer to the journey. We strongly believe that we should collaborate with the shipping lines, with our industrial partners, with the OEMs, the engine manufacturers, to assess the needs of the various bits and pieces of that infrastructure and collaborate with the entities that should make that happen. So we tend to gather coalitions of the willing, coalitions of parties that would envisage and share our aspirational goals and to collectively work towards providing both the hardware, if you'd like, as well as the energy carrier that may be chosen by the various parties. If I could give some examples, currently we have extensive collaborations related to the various hydrogen opportunities. We strongly believe that Europe will produce its own hydrogen, green hydrogen from wind farms offshore, but we, at the same time, are convinced that a strong import requirement will be met as well. And so we are collaborating as we speak with countries like Portugal, Morocco, Oman, Australia, Saudi, Chile, Brazil, Canada, Iceland, etc., to assess where we could get hold of lowest cost, reliable green hydrogen. As a port, we wish to make available the necessary infrastructure, and we will, as I said, collaborate with the OEMs to make available those energy carriers that they would require. Over time, I'm convinced that there will be not a single winner, but there will be a portfolio of energy carriers that meet this particular demand. And like you, we work on electrification, on point-to-point shipping opportunities. You can imagine the ferries from the Netherlands to the UK, but also the entire inland vessel fleet could either be decarbonized through hydrogen or through electrification. And we are collaborating and we have initiatives up and running already. There's three other elements I'd like to mention. One is that we will seek incentives for shipping lines to embark on this journey and rather be proactive and early movers than late adopters. The second element is that I strongly believe that as a port, we should not be trying to invent the wheel and sit on our technology and knowledge. We're not going to win this climate change challenge if we do not share. So we ourselves set up in 2018 an initiative called the World Ports Climate Action Program, and some 12 ports around the world have joined us in sharing the same aspirational goals on a zero emission profile. And this is from LA to Vancouver to Barcelona to Hamburg, Antwerp, and various other ports as partners. And so we collaborate, we share best practices, we share technologies so that also shipping lines will not be faced with different technologies in different port arenas. I think the other thing that I'd like to share on this occasion is that we also collaborate with port organizations in Singapore, Japan, to look at the Advanced Future Fuels Network. So again, fuels that should be taken on board in Singapore should meet same specs, should have similar regulation, rules, safety facilities as we would conduct in Rotterdam for shipping lines, thus to make life as easy as possible. So altogether, we strongly believe that ports play a vital role in providing the infrastructure, in encouraging the shipping lines to embrace these changes, to incentivize if necessary, and most importantly, have an outcome-based regulation, creating a level playing field, and welcoming thus this necessary case for change. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Castellane, thank you for your kind explanation on the infrastructure in European and other major ports. You have shared the valuable information about the significant transition from the conventional fuel types to other alternative fuels. Then I have a question for you. As Mr. Castellane, as you might know, Republic of Korea has been developing the portable and replaceable power supply system for electric propulsion ships with the alternative maritime power solution in ports. Are there any similar plans or developments going on in relation to port infrastructure for zero carbon shipping in the Netherlands? Could you comment?
Yeah, thank you. And I think these are indeed very exciting developments in Korea, and we are keen to, as I said, not try and reinvent the wheel, but share best practice and learn from each other and hopefully develop regulations and standardization and technologies along a similar pathway. I think the three elements that I'd like to kind of refer to on this occasion are that indeed hydrogen, as I alluded to, in which way, shape or form that may actually come to market, the liquid, the ammonia, the LOHCs, remains to be seen. But there's other facilities that we are embarking upon. Certainly the mobile electrification power unit for inland shipping is an exciting joint venture that we just started with Wärtsilä and the ING Bank, and where again we have a point-to-point solution where a fully charged through green energy, obviously, container-sized battery is taken on board by an inland vessel, used to its full, and once near to empty, offloaded from the barge, and then it will take on a new fully charged battery. So the vessel itself will not incur delays as a consequence of the charging. It will have indeed to make a short and quick stopover, but that's likely to be executed within the hour or so. So yeah, you discharge the empty battery container, you take on board the fully charged battery, and we provide that infrastructure. We've bought the batteries. By the way, these are stuck on the Ever Given. These were the first batteries that we had ordered, and so the launch has been delayed as the unfortunate, as the dire consequence of the unfortunate events. But we're confident that we will bring this to market. We'll have a battery-powered infrastructure, so the batteries, not only batteries, but also infrastructure to offload and unload, and make that available. And the other thing is that we're working very hard on is shore power. So cold ironing. Now we have a large port area, so 12,000 hectares of land. So if we were to roll out shore power in one go at current prices, it would cost us well over €1 billion or so. So we're again aligning ourselves with key stakeholders to get them to accept shore power, share technologies with Hamburg, with Antwerp, create a level playing field, and embrace challenging targets in order to convert all import movements. The final thing, perhaps in brief, but I may come back to that later, is that there's further efficiencies and opportunities to be gained by using an IoT platform, doing away with a lot of waste on idle time and inefficiencies. So on an IoT premise, we ensure that vessels can actually get in and out of the port in the most efficient way. But perhaps there's an opportunity for me to come back to that at a later stage. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again for your explanation, Mr. Castellane. You have mentioned the importance of infrastructure in the port and the role of the authorities for decarbonization. I think the role of the port authorities will be increased more and more as times go by. I think we better move on to the next topic so that we can finish our discussion on time. Okay, now it's time to move to the second topic, which is development and supply of zero carbon fuels and ships. Here we have a COO of Lloyd Register, Mr. Mark Darley. Let me ask you a question. As of today, when it comes to the road transportation, hydroelectric cars are commercially operated without any outstanding technical problems. And the supply of hydroelectric cars has been increased along with the increased number of charging stations at the same time. On the other hand, when it comes to the maritime transportation, it seems to take more time for zero carbon ships to be commercialized. So my question is, what do you think the biggest challenge or problem in the development and the commercialization of zero carbon vessels is? In line with this question, how do you think we can deal with such challenges or problems, if any? Could you comment on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kim, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's a pleasure to join you all this evening on this panel. Well, firstly, in response to your question, when we talk about the pace of development, let's just remind ourselves that by 2030, we must have commercially viable, technical, feasibly safe, sustainable zero-emission vessels entering the fleet. So that's 9 years if we are going to be on track to meet the zero emissions targets that are currently set by the IMO for 2050. Just to put that into some sort of context, when we went from the previous transition within maritime from coal to an oil-based fuel, that took about 50 years. And in those times, you know, we knew the fuel supply, the fuel weren't as dangerous and technically challenging as we have with this transition, but still it took 50 years. So as you rightly say, Mr. Kim, there is a pace of development, but there's also a challenge of development. When we talk about really the tipping points and what we need to do to make that transition, really it relies on three main factors, those being the community factors, the technology factors, and the commercial or investment readiness factors of making the transition. Now, I think it's fair to say that we have the technologies for zero carbon shipping, both on the vessels and within the fuel production side. There are, however, as you know, the other panelists have spoken about as well, there's still many, many challenges in terms with scaling that technology and making it commercial for deployment and development. I think those technologies, as we've seen, have started to be developed through collaboration, and we're seeing, because of that, an increase in the number of prototypes moving to pilots and projects, full-scale projects now materializing themselves around the world. From a marine decarbonization, I do think it's moving pretty quickly. You know, certainly in the last 12 to 24 months, we've seen the pace of the conversation within the industry accelerate. From a Lloyd's Register perspective, similar to the Mercer McKinney Muller Decarb Centre, Lloyd's Register has established its own maritime decarbonization hub, and that's funded by the Lloyd's Register Foundation. And that's really to act as a dedicated platform or centre of excellence to build that collaboration and those partnerships in projects to further accelerate the safe, sustainable transition that we're talking about today. Now, we've been involved in a number of demonstrator projects looking at a variety of zero carbon fuels using our marine readiness framework that assesses really against those three main factors that I spoke about before, those being the technology, community, and investment readiness. And that's across the whole supply chain. So this standardized assessment ensures that we get that consistency of evaluation when we talk about the different fuels and we talk about the different applications, different ship types, different routes and different sizing. So for example, one of those projects has been the Castor initiative, which brought together the ship owners, the shipyard, the SME, the OEMs, the fuel providers, and ourselves, the regulators, to demonstrate an ammonia-fueled deep-sea vessel is technically feasible and safe. And I think that demonstrators like these are critical. And if there is a commitment made at the end of this project to build that prototype ammonia deep-sea vessel, then certainly, as Anna said as well, we can expect these vessels to come into service before that 2030 deadline. So these projects, as you can imagine, and the collaboration create a better understanding of the operational and safety challenges around the transition to zero carbon. And I think as well, save money in the longer term in identifying the issues earlier on in the design stage. And that clearly reduces the possibility of significant cost and delays in later stages. But as I said, this is not just a technology challenge. Clearly, the bigger challenges are in the community readiness, but more so in the investment readiness. And there really needs to be a fundamental shift in the market and the regulatory incentives to increase the uptake of zero carbon energy sources and make fossil fuels less attractive across the whole industry. Now, this really it's about OPEX, operational cost, not about the CAPEX of how much does the vessel cost to construct or to buy. When we talk about zero carbon fuels, they will be more expensive than the fuels that are used today. Our studies estimate somewhere between 3 to 4 times the cost of VLSFO that is used today. And then that leads into the community challenge. And clearly, to manage the transition, policy needs to be designed to remedy the missing market and accelerate the support for industry ambitions to deliver greenhouse gas emission reductions in line with the Paris Agreement. And on that, we encourage the IMO to take the opportunity at the emerging MEPC 76 in June to pursue some really bold market-based measures and sustainability criteria for marine fuels. If done, these should establish market-making expectations at a global scale, and the IMO has the capability to do that. And that will help attract as well as de-risk the investment and the environment that we're currently in terms of making that transition. I think finally, it's important to recognize that how maritime or shipping decarbonizes is clearly closely linked to the evolution of the wider energy sector. Shipping will no longer have its own unique fuel like arguably we've had previously. There will also be no one-size-fits-all, and I agree with the other panelists there that they say that this will be a multi-fuel future. Different solutions will suit different ship types in different operational profiles. But we will see a portfolio mix, I think, with differences across both short sea shipping as well as deep sea shipping and operational profiles. And let's remember that shipping is part of the global supply chains, and the energy transition, there's an opportunity, I think, really now for shipping to be a catalyst and leverage synergies with some of the other sectors that are going through very, very similar challenges at the moment in really creating across the whole supply chain that economy of scale and reducing risks. And in turn, that will help accelerate the transition that we're all facing.
Okay, thank you for your explanations, Mr. Mark Darley. You mentioned that we need to consider technology readiness, community cooperation, and investment for commercialization of zero carbon vessels. Regulations of emissions from the ship and market-based measures would be closely related to the investment. In this sense, I think we should be interested in the IMO upcoming meetings, MEPC 76 and 77. And we should pay attention to how the discussions on the environmental regulations and the market-based measures will be made there. Now, let's talk about the movement of a shipping company for decarbonization in Republic of Korea. I want to make a question to Mr. Bae, who is a president of HMM. Let me speak in Korean now. 예, 배재원 대표님께 여쭙니다.
I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Bae Jae-hoon.
2008년 2050년까지
As you may know, the initial IMO GHG strategy set targets for decarbonization of international shipping to reduce CO2 emission by 50% by 2050 compared to the 2008 level. Given that ships are usually operated for 20 to 30 years, thus low carbon ships should be in a service before 2030. But the problem is that the governments around the world are making heavy investment, but most of these investment are overlapping. That's why the shipping companies are engaged in IMRB and saying that international governance is important. Would you respond to this question? Thank you very much. And I would like to respond to this question. Responding to global warming in a responsible manner and pursuing the transition to low carbon and green energy is indeed an urgent task. Nations around the world should put forward national climate commitment, which is called NDC, and track progress in implementing and achieving NDC.
HMM은 해상과 육상에서
The shipping industry is also tightening carbon dioxide regulation to minimize the impact of international shipping on the environment. HMM has strived to fulfill its environmental responsibility by minimizing the impact of its business operation and also trying to develop a management system so that a systematic outcome can be produced. HMM has a goal to meet the 2050 target. Therefore, it has a goal for each fleet. As for our roadmap,
기준으로 2020년 40%
HMM
달성하였으며
has achieved its 2020 target of bringing down CO2 emissions by 40% compared to the 2008 level, and has developed the implemented concrete plans to cut GHG emissions by 50% by 2030 and reach carbon neutrality by 2050. This target demonstrates its commitment and accountability to tackle its carbon footprint in line with the 2050 carbon neutrality target of the government of Korea. To respond to climate change, HMM has initiated a green energy efficient management system to monitor and analyze GHG emissions from vessels on a real-time basis. As for existing vessels in operation, the energy efficiency of each vessel is constantly analyzed to optimize vessel operation and performance. An energy-saving device will be installed with regard to vessel currently under construction. High-efficient and energy-saving facilities and equipment are integrated in the design. HMM will participate in reducing
밀접하게 연결됩니다.
GHG gas. HMM GHG reduction target are closely linked with its fleet management plan. Based on a mid and long-term fleet management strategy, the amount of CO2 emissions is estimated by simulation for not only its own vessel but also vessel chartered under a BBC, which is chartered for more than 3 years. This is to predict and analyze future emissions. In terms of new builds, a variety of low-carbon fuels will be applied, starting from LNG to ammonia, methanol, hydrogen fuel, and more. In particular, we are carefully looking at the feasibility of the use of ammonia as a future marine fuel.
올해 4월에는
In April this year, we launched a joint research for ammonia-fueled vessel together with several Korean companies in this area. We believe that replacement of existing vessels with new builds powered by green fuels will naturally enable us to achieve our mid and long-term reduction
그린
target.
연료 도입을
And
국제적으로
we
하기로 하였습니다.
are going to introduce a green fueled vessel through a coalition.
HMM의 중장
HMM
자연스럽게 달성될 수 있습니다.
mid to long-term goal will easily be reached.
예산
We
운용
believe.
기간인 2020년에서 2030년 사이에는 보다 적극적인 감축 활동이 필요할 것이라 생각합니다. 기존 탄소 배출량 감소를 위해서는 바이오 개발과 적용,
We are also
효율 향상을
trying to develop biofuel
여러
and
기업에서는
apply biofuel to existing vessel.
적정 혼합에 대한 연구에 많은
We are also interested in doing research on a
바이오
fuel
에너지 협회, 현대중공업, 한국
HMM signed an
한국
MOU
선박과
on
함께
cooperation in
선박에서
biofuel
배출되는
pilot projects with the
위해
Korea Bioenergy
친환경 연료,
Association,
바이오
Hyundai Heavy Industries, Korea
사용
Shipbuilding and
실증을
Marine
위한
Engineering, and
2020년
Korea Registered Shipping to tackle
바이오
harmful
중립
emissions from vessel.
검정
And the biofuel pilot project is currently underway.
아울러
Furthermore, HMM has developed and deployed diverse activities to improve energy efficiency through its own ship energy efficiency management plan, whether shipping distance and transit time are considered to make efficient voyage planning that can minimize fuel consumption and run at optimal economic speed. In addition, using the vessel insight data infrastructure, route planning is optimized. Moreover, to monitor the energy efficiency of vessels in a real-time basis, a vessel situation room or a central operations center was opened in September 2020. As Maritime Authority of the Republic of Korea, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has ramped up investment in government R&D programs on energy-saving devices for vessels. The programs include diverse research on developing devices that can reduce ship resistance and improve propulsion and consumption efficiency. Together with Shipyard University and Research Center, we are actively
45년에는 탄소 중립을
doing
달성했다고
various
일정을
R&D programs.
이러한 상황에서 해운업계에서 탄소 감
Momentum to reduce GHG emission is rapidly
우리
gaining
글로벌 선사들은 국제적 기준의 감축 목표
steam.
달성을 위해서
And
대체 연료 추진선 개발
we are making more effort
가능한 대체 연료의 연구
to
개발
develop alternative fuel and also
능력 확보
secure financial capacity to undertake reduction activities and acquire government policy support for green
기존 대표님
transition.
답변
Thank you.
감사드립니다. IMO 선박 규제 대응
Thank you very much for your explanation. You talked about optimization of operation to the use of alternative fuels such as LNG, biofuel, and ammonia and hydrogen. And also, you said that the development of alternative fuel is vital, and your company will make great effort in this process.
대표님, 무탄소 선박 기술의 개발을 목표로 국제사회가 역량을 집중하고 있습니다. 다만 2030년까지 선박의 종류와 크기 등 선사의 다양한 수요를 맞춰는
It seems that the international society has drawn growing attention to technology development of zero-carbon ships. However, given that it's not easy to make such ships commercially operated by 2030, I'd like to hear your opinions about the prospect of low-carbon fuel propulsion ships using, for example, LNG or ammonia. This question goes to Mr. Lee Sung-geun of the SME. Thank you. We heard from the ports and also
비슷한 저희 조선업계가 보는 시각에서
the classification and
최근에는
shipping parties. Now let me talk from the shipbuilding parties. As you know, the currently application of carbon-reducing fuels such as LNG and LPG becomes widespread. Statistics show that about 20% of ships ordered this year have adopted LNG propulsion, and the rate is increasing rapidly. In addition to LNG as a fuel, the continuous improvement of
70% 이상의 그 선박들이
and currently about 60-70% of new order of ships are mostly LNG or LPG using as a propulsion. In my opinion, this is really an amazing change. In my opinion, a lot of things have been said about the LNG as a bridge energy and its efficacy for a certain period of time. I think it's been now recognized by the shipping industry. Now, using LNG as a fuel and continuous improvement on fuel and propulsion efficiency, combined with economic operation solutions of smart ship, will be able to reduce CO2 emission by 30 to 40%. However, research on carbon-neutral fuels is essential to comply with the final target of zero emissions in shipping, as LNG and LPG are conventional fossil fuels. In case of methanol, there is already a history of MELGIM installation on the methanol carrier. Methanol has the advantage of being stored at room temperature and pressure. The energy density is relatively high compared to other eco-friendly fuels, so the tank size is 2.3 times larger than MGO, which is similar to LNG fuel tanks. However, carbon emission reduction rate of methanol is similar to LPG fuel only, and in order to be recognized as carbon neutral fuel, methanol shall be produced from green hydrogen or biomethanol, which will inevitably increase in price. And one more task ahead will be currently methanol is mostly used for small vessels, but engine development for VLCC should also come together. Biogas and biodiesel can be applied to ships in the same way as conventional gas and diesel fuels, so there will be no technical difficulties. However, currently, it seems not easy for large supply at a proper price. Therefore, the shipbuilding industry is actively conducting research on ammonia and hydrogen. Same with other, I believe, shipping-related industries. Ammonia, for example, is a carbon-neutral fuel which is of interest in the shipping and shipbuilding industries. It has competitive advantage in terms of production, transportation, and storage over hydrogen. Engine companies are also developing large commercial engines with a target to apply the engines on ships after completing tests in 2024. That's our kind of judgment that large engines will be commercially available by that time. Challenges are that the size of the tank should be more than 4 times larger than that of MGO due to its low energy density. Countermeasures against large volume of nitrogen oxide emissions, toxicity, and corrosiveness needs to also be prepared, as was also discussed in previous presentation by DSME. I believe with the current technology we can tackle those issues. In the previous session, we have shown you how we are doing co-development with Lloyd, and recently ammonia ready and other options are being prepared by the shipbuilding industries, and I believe this can very soon apply to real projects for LNG propulsion ammonia ready, LPG propulsion ammonia ready.
액화수소를 저장하기 위해서는
And hydrogen chloride can be used as a fuel for ships. In order to store equivalent hydrogen, cryogenic tanks with excellent insulation must be developed, but they must be more than 8 times the size of MGO, making it difficult to secure economic feasibility. Therefore, it is also discussed to store hydrogen as a form of ammonia or LOHC, liquefied organic hydrogen carrier, which has a relatively high energy density, and use fuel cells after reforming them into hydrogen. These are the areas of research topic at our company. Although I don't really know as much, I think our experts are leading that effort. In January this year, we developed a VLCC design with a solid oxide fuel cell and received approval from a class. If I may talk more about the fuel cell, currently there's a capacity restriction and there is also price issue. We think that by 2030, for small vessels or mid-sized vessels, megawatt level fuel cells and batteries propelled hybrid system can be available. So for VLCC fuel cell system, in other words, would take more time for development. So in conclusion, shipyards are actively researching the application of future eco-friendly fuels such as methanol, ammonia, and hydrogen, including engine and equipment companies. And when the shipping company requires that, we're preparing them to be available as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Lee-Seung-gun, for the detailed answer. So with various companies' cooperation, I hope that the technology that you have mentioned can be developed in a timely way. So we need also port-related recovery. So port needs to be ready. So my question next goes to Rotterdam's Port Authority, Mr. Elliot Kastelein.
I'd like to ask that what kind of roles can or should ports play on the development and distribution of zero-emission vessels? Do you have any example of cooperation between ship side and port side you want to share with us?
Thank you. Like I believe I introduced on the previous occasion, yes, we collaborate with shipping lines, with OEMs, with engine manufacturers to co-create, if you'd like, the necessary solutions and provide the necessary infrastructure. So as a company, we will invest in that infrastructure. We're also working with, for instance, DSME on developing technology to connect smart ships with smart ports, reducing waste, idle time, inefficiencies, getting those out of the system. And in addition, I think there's an important role for ports to play in ensuring that the operations can be conducted in a safely and timely manner, because we do obviously recognize that an essential part of our license to operate as the shipping industry is safety, efficiency, and taking care of our people and the environment. So we do not want to get into an operation where bunkering is not feasible whilst cargo is being handled. So simultaneous operations is, I believe, essential for the shipping industry. So we work on those rules, those regulations, those safety expectations. We work on the hard infrastructure to enable shore power, cold ironing. We work on import terminals for green hydrogen, be it in ammonia, LOHC, or liquid shape or form. So I think what you will find across the globe is that leading ports should be the first movers on this. And I can think of various leading ports, but you can take the top 10 or 20 ports in the world that should take ownership in providing the facilities. I don't think it's necessary for every port to have all these facilities available. It's not conceivable, in my point of view, that all ports should offer bunker facilities or that all ports should have, for instance, a hydrogen infrastructure available. But it should be clear that next to the point-to-point solutions, where it's predetermined where a vessel will call upon, the flexibility of moving cargoes around, be it chartered vessels in the bulk carriers or be it container vessels, you should have particular points along the way and around the planet almost, from east to west and west to east and north to south, where the shipping liner can rely on bunkers being available. Now, we in Rotterdam, we envisage, we're one of the largest bunker ports in the world, and we envisage that we will be so and remain to be so with the new zero-emission fuels, and thus we will collaborate with Port of Houston, Port of New York, Port of LA, and the Port of Singapore, and the Port of Dubai, the Port of Zohar, in order to set up that framework of ports and have a consistency and same technologies and same rules and regulations available to make it as easy as possible for liners. But that will take significant investment and it will take a number of years, but that's clearly the role ports will be playing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allard Castellane. Smart ports connected with smart ships will be very interesting. This new way of connecting ships to ports will make a strong position of smart shipping being a disruptive innovation. Also, I expect many port authorities will support the future of eco-friendly ships. Okay, let's talk about the final topic, bridging the gaps in technology between developed countries, least developed countries, or small island developing states, and the cooperation between government and industrial sectors. Ms. Allard Castellane, it is obvious that each country has a different level of management strategy for decarbonization. This would cause the gap among countries about the technology development of decarbonization. Some measures to deal with this problem, such as providing international support or collecting and sharing exemplary cases, have been discussed. Do you think such information sharing system can contribute to zero carbon for maritime shipping? Also, which roles do you think the port authorities can play in resolving such technology gaps among the countries?
Yeah, thank you. I find it an interesting question. It's pretty much like this network that we are present in today. I believe in these coalitions of the willing. I believe in these organizations that wish to make a difference. The example of IKEA was mentioned. The example of Maersk was mentioned. I give an example as a port. And I believe those organizations, those entities should collaborate and work together and establish the new normal almost. I don't think, and that's not to belittle the global organizations, but global organizations by definition have a tendency to move towards the slowest or the lowest common denominator. And what I'm looking for continuously is those shakers and movers that wish to make a difference, and subsequently create that coalition of the willing, and then spread the word. We share the information, we share the technology, we share the learnings, we share the regulations, we share the safety concerns, we share the manner in which simultaneous operations can take place. That's the reason we created the World Ports Climate Action Program. That's the reason the Port of Rotterdam is a member of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. That's the reason I'm part of many of these fora where we collaborate. That's the reason I participate in the Getting to Zero coalition. So I share that information. I engage with others that want to make a difference. I take on the learnings from other examples and spread the word. So we do not reinvent the wheel. So I think ports have a pivotal role, but I would encourage those ports that are like-minded to identify their friends and focus on their friends and not on their foes or the entities that wish to possibly move later in this decade or later in the next decade. Look for those ports and organizations that really consider this as an opportunity, as a force for good, and then we'll create a flywheel with bigger and bigger impact continuously. So that's what I see as our role. Thank you.
Thank you. You emphasize the importance of sharing relevant information to accelerate energy transition. Since we are actually behind the schedule, I think we have a better move faster and in short. Today, thank you all for the opinions and explanation you made on the three topics so far. I think we have done for the panel discussion with the three selected topics today. I think we can summarize our discussion today as follows. First of all, we need to make various efforts from different fields in a cooperative manner to promote decarbonization for the shipping industry. Technology development is supply and expansion can be reinforced by establishing policy measures. For decarbonization in the shipping industry, effective communication and the cooperative actions between country and public, including civil societies and the companies, are very essential. And technology development and its dissemination and spread are the key elements to make the decarbonization possible. I think it is not too much to emphasize that those action plans and goals mentioned earlier can only be achieved through international cooperation. Last but not the least, if I missed out something, or is there anyone who wants to add something more, feel free to make additional comments. I think we can have only 1 minute for wrapping up today's discussion. Sorry for very short time, but if you have any further questions, please to do so. Okay, as there is no more question, I'd like to conclude. This is the end of the panel discussion today. I would like to express my great appreciation to all of you for your participation, sharing your expertise in each field. I hope today's discussion will become a meaningful one more step toward blue ocean you want to keep for the future. Again, thank you very much for your participation today. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all panelists and the moderator, for your invaluable contribution to this session and your heated discussion. Now, this is the end of the first part of the ocean session of 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. We are going to take a little break and resume the second part of the session with the theme of marine litter issues. We're going to be back in about 15 minutes at 10:30 sharp in Korean time. During the break, we are preparing a video screening. It is about the exhibition of East Asian Sea Futures, photo competition winners' works, and ocean-themed ASMR. Please enjoy the beautiful sceneries, and I'll see you at 10:30.